There's been a lot of talk by some, let's say, less competent game devs, saying that a game like Baldur's Gate 3 is an anomaly, and it can't be possibly held to such a standard. What I want to do is not just say they're wrong, but show some ways in which they're wrong, by breaking the game down a little bit. At initial glance, it looks, and it is, an incredibly deep, interconnected world with a seemingly infinite amount of mix and match possibilities. Many of the most complex structures, when broken down, are put together by simple parts put in the correct places. When this practice is done properly, there's no reason any game dev worth their weight in salt could not do the same. To be clear, I'm not speaking of some small indie studios, but about the big developers like Blizzard or Ubisoft, who have more funds, resources, and manpower than the independent Larian studios. Act 1 has a lot of things going for it all at once, all of it leading you towards the endgame. We have the Ravaged Beach, the Crypt, Druid's Grove, Blighted Village, Goblin Camp, the Hag, the Gnolls and the Thieves, Joaquin's Rest, the Owlbear Cave, the Githyanki, miscellaneous road encounters, and that's just on the surface. I'm not saying what I'm about to describe is what Larian did. I don't have any inside knowledge. What I want people to take away is that one guy, not connected to the industry, is able to break things down in this way so even the common man can understand. The closest I have to experience is I run a business, so the principles of what I describe I tend to do in other scenarios. The first thing you need to understand, all the places I just mentioned, get them out of your head. In Act 1, the main focus is two places, Druid's Grove and Goblin Hideout. Larian Studios is not a single person writing every single aspect of the map and the story. People are put into teams, so the all-star team can focus on the main pivotal driving force, the goblins, druids, and tieflings. You can have Team 2 deal with the inner workings of the crypt, Team 3 deal with the fake paladins, Team 4 deal with the Owlbear Cave, on and on. Then, when each team has their core components and ideas down, you come together and stitch them up. But for now, our team focuses on the two, Druid's Grove, Goblin Camp. From there we break it down again. The player can side with the goblins or side with the druids and tieflings, and even further by choosing druids or tieflings, but we won't deal with that right now. Forget about combat. Forget about unique class dialogue choices. That's not being focused on right now. We've got a classic side A versus side B conflict, and you get to choose what side to be on. We can't forget the overall plot, which includes everyone going to Baldur's Gate, and the Absolute. Goblins are the primary Absolute plot, and Druid's Grove, or more specifically the Tieflings, are heading to Baldur's Gate. So aside from all the other complexities of the game, which have their own teams, right now, for your team, is essentially three options, with some having an alternative choice. Choice 1, go with the Goblins and slaughter the Grove. Choice 2, help the Tieflings and the Druids and slaughter the Goblins. This can be split with you helping only the Tieflings or only the Druids. The final choice, kill both of them. As I'm recording this, I just thought of another option. Ignore them all, which would be a considerably easier choice to lay out the story as you just ignore them all. But for the sake of being fair, we'll say 3.5 choices. When it's all said and done, for the player, it's good to have them feel overwhelmed with the choices. 12 classes, 46 subclasses, 11 races, 31 sub-races, over 600 spells. To say nothing of all the different types of gear. A developer might look at that and wonder how the hell are you going to be able to encode all of this? Well, you won't have to. You won't be assigned to everything. You'll be assigned to one thing at a time. Furthermore, almost all of this already exists in D&D. It's just choosing how to best translate it into a video game. So suddenly your job has gone from making up and figuring out over 600 spells to being assigned, let's say, the relevant divine spells that you guys want for the game, and then just copy pasting them. You break things down and you put them back together. Back to the all-star team and the main plot. Someone on your team mentions the Tiefling and Druid conflict early on in the story writing. How there could be more there if you guys flesh it out. So someone on the team writes out the idea of you disrupting the ritual and offing the Druids, or otherwise pissing them off and forcing the Rite of Thorns to happen. In terms of the game in the flowchart, that'll be essentially siding with the Goblins in terms of the broad picture and moving the story along. The Goblins will either kill the Tieflings in the Grove or in the Road. You don't necessarily need to create an entirely new subplot for this, but rather just new dialogues. The nitty-gritty details can be worked out later. And frankly, that's where a lot of the fun really resides, where you can give these conflicts some real personality instead of just tropes and archetypes. you speak with the side mission teams. The overall idea of the Hag's Lair is done, but the writing team is wondering how to properly write your first encounter with the Hag and the brothers. It keeps coming off as weird. There's not enough good flow to it. Why not have an introduction beforehand? Let's bring her to the Druid's Grove first. Give her a little potion shop to set up where you can talk with her. Have that be how we introduce her to the tadpole. Depending on the class, you might even start to notice that something is off about this old lady. Otherwise, your interactions will be nice and happy enough where she may make you let your guard down, changing your view of the encounter with the brothers. You have interconnected these 2 points of the game and made everything feel more intertwined, and you were initially just focusing on your own area. While this is going on, the person in charge of Asterian's questline is wondering where to best put the monster hunter. Will he be randomly on the road? Maybe sneak up in camp? That'll be a little bit too limiting to your choices. Maybe place him in the Druid's Grove, hoping to get help from the Druids? Nah, there's already so much going on in the main spots. The world needs to expand beyond these 2 points, because the more focus is given to these 2 points, the less important the rest of the world in Act 1 will seem. And you want to give the illusion that these 2 main points are just like any other points on the map. Having him next to the Hag's Lair will be great, the Hag team says. He can be planning to use the Hag for help. It makes sense in story, and it'll help give more content to this side point of the game. Back to the All-Star team dealing with the main plot points. Let's take a look at the goblins. There's no real fighting or internal politics with the goblins, outside of a few general ego-driven desires for power. They're ultimately united by the Absolute and the 3 main True Soul leaders. We need to help advance some character storylines though. Have the goblin who took Will's eye be located somewhere in the areas. It takes place in a village and a temple. Why not have the village hold some significance to Shadowheart? Have the temple be Selûnite and go with that plot. For anyone who is a decent writer and storyteller, being able to weave in these different elements will not be that difficult. If anything, the difficulty will be not having too much fun and figuring out all the different ways you can go with it. In less than 10 minutes, I have given you a structure, not the structure, but a single structure of how a video game of this magnitude can be made without throwing it up to a wild chance of an anomaly. The purpose of me doing it is twofold. First is to try and showcase that the game devs that have been crying and complaining about people saying Baldur's Gate 3 is a new standard can very much do all this. They have the manpower, they have the money. What they lack, however, is a vision and a passion. My breakdown is not meant to show that the work involved is easy, just that it's possible. It's possible in the same way that if you work out and you can do, let's say, 100 push-ups in a single session before you collapse and cannot do any more, you're going to be able to do 85 push-ups in a single session. That doesn't mean it'll be easy, you'll still be exhausted and sore, and maybe on some days you're just not feeling it and can't even do that, but it's still very much within the realm of possibility if you just do it. That's why these game devs should draw everyone's ire. It's not that they can't hit these levels if they just apply themselves. They can get those 85 push-ups if the best is 100. It's just that they don't want to get all sweaty, they don't want to get sore, and there's a new YouTube video they want to watch instead, or whatever whining they want to do. The other purpose of me making this video is for those who themselves became inspired by Baldur's Gate 3 and wondered if they can possibly make something as magnificent. Yeah, you can. I've never held on to the idea that video games only need to be some fun pastime. Music can motivate us, movies can inspire us, books can enlighten us. There is no reason video games cannot do the same thing. In fact, I would be so bold as to say video games have the capability to do every one of those things listed, but even better than all the previous mediums. Something that's been around for around 50 years is competing with things that have been able to be refined since the dawn of mankind. We are far from realizing its potential. Every person here has at one point or another been inspired by a video game, whether the thrilling rush of a climactic ending or the crippling loss of a character we have grown to love. A soundtrack that can keep us going, a choice we've made that made us question our sense of right and wrong, a chance to be someone we are not and see the world through another pair of eyes, an ability to create an idealized version of ourselves and see just what we might be capable of in this fantasy that brings us closer to it than a book or movie possibly can. I often joke by saying I take my Chinese cartoons way too seriously, but I also take my moving pixels quite seriously as well. But that's because I can see the potential in video games that I don't think humanity as a collective has really been able to comprehend just yet. And I see Baldur's Gate as another peeling away of that layer. You know what comes next, but I'm adding a different twist to it, so please listen to that twist. Like, share, subscribe, yada yada yada. And if you want to support a creator who actually creates, check out my tees, handcrafted, at my website, The Dragon's Treasure. Help support videos that take some time and effort into planning, as well as me sponsoring myself and not needing to rely on scummy clickbait mobile games or low-rate self-help apps. With enough funding and support from my business, I'll one day make a video game studio of my own, and we'll be producing plenty of Baldur's Gate 3 level quality games out of it. But that's a story for another time.